Hell yeah, let's get Stinko.
If you want it, don't just think you want it. Go out and fucking want it.
Arizona race to the puck. Paolo's going to get there. He's in. He scores! Eric Paolo has tied the game for Minnesota. There's Bryz. Back up top. Bryz fires, scores! An opening night hat trick for Zach Bryz. Poked away by Palmerville. Palmerville and Niederreiter, 2-on-1. Niederreiter scores! Oposo's in alone. Oposo saved by Dubnik.
Welcome, Giles and the Goalies podcast. Another somewhat special edition. Well, actually, it's a special edition. I don't know what you call Saturdays, but
special too.
Okay, it's all special. I am Giles Farrell. Next to me again is Ben Remington.
Hello.
And across the table from us, he familiar voice to Minnesota Wild fans. He now is just he's now the sports reporter at the Pioneer Press. Kind of covers just a little bit of everything. The super utility player. I'm not sure if I'd go as far to say Nick Punto of the sports department.
Jenny Hawking.
But you may remember him as he was the Minnesota Wild beat writer for a few years, and that is Chad Graff.
What's going on, guys? Journeyman.
No, thanks for Chad for joining us.
Yeah.
It took a little bit to try to hammer out a date, but
Mostly my fault, not theirs.
I don't know, we're kind of busy.
Yeah,
so,
we're a big
Kind
deal
of a big
now.
deal, yeah.
we're in demand.
Really. Not really, but
New network and everything.
New podcast network.
Yeah.
Same two smart hosts. Here we are.
I guess just for everyone off the hop, Chad, how's life away from the Wild beat treating you?
Different. I will admit, this is my very first full winter of not traveling to Florida or California or Texas during the winter. And here we are at the end of January, and for the first time, I'll be honest, I'm getting a little stir crazy. I used to tell my friends, like, oh, it's really not that bad. You know, it's cold every now and then, but it's not horrible. And now that I don't leave for Fort Lauderdale and Tampa and Dallas, I could see how it could wear on you a little bit.
Yeah. I'm guilty. Every year I go, okay, next winter I'm going to go somewhere warm, go see the Wild play in Florida, and then that never happens. And I can see that it wouldn't be so bad if you get away for snippets at a time. And
no, I didn't realize how spoiled I was.
So you've kind of covered the Vikings, and I think you're now into the Gopher hoops a little bit. So I guess a question that I'm wondering, and maybe others is that are you concerned that you've kind of put a hex on these teams with the midseason swoons they now endure?
I am not concerned. Richard Pitino may be concerned. Mike Zimmer may be concerned. I don't know what sport is going to be next. Maybe the Twins, although I don't really know if that could be considered a season swoon.
Well, I think they're now just under a decade swoon.
Right.
Yeah,
so.
It doesn't count if you start poorly, too.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. This has been weird for me to watch from afar, as here we are in late January, and the Wild are continually humming along. Every time I watch them, at least in the last month, and I've been like, all right, this is where the wheels start to fall off. And even sometimes I've felt like I was going to be right, like their game hasn't looked good. And then all of a sudden in the third period, they've come back from 2 goals down and been winning games. And I'll be honest, it's a little confusing for me to see. I'm not used to this.
You and every other Wild fan, pretty much. We're all just completely confused as to what's going on.
You keep hitting refresh on the standings on NHL. It's still there, really? Number one?
They're still there. How do they keep winning? Like, so many of these games, they fall down 1-0, 2-0 right away, and it just been the case for last year, just like, this over. You can turn the channel and you're not going to miss anything. And this year, that is the exact opposite. They always seem to find a way to come back and win.
Yeah, I think that's what's kind of lost in this whole, people made a lot of big deal about them blowing so many 2-goal leads in the last 2 weeks. It's like, well, they still have a very good record in those 2 weeks. Like, I know it's weird.
They're still winning a while.
Yeah, and you're looking for something to be concerned about, I guess, more or less. But, they're like, that's the thing. They're blowing 2-goal leads and still winning the game. Like, that's, like Giles said, completely unheard of this team in seasons past. I mean, they wouldn't have had 2-goal leads to begin with, but that's a different story.
I love that problem.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that would have been
problem to have.
A great problem to have for last year's team.
Oh, it's 3-0 at the end of the first, not favoring the Wild. They might. And the thing with that last year was they'd get like 2 goals. They'd give you this false hope that they could tie it up, send it to overtime, but then no, the wheels would just come off.
Which was all summarized in the playoff series in Game 6 when they came all the way back. Got the X as loud as I've ever heard. Got everybody happy. Holy, are we allowed to swear on this?
Sure, we can do it again.
Never mind. Holy crap, they're about to come back, and just in fitting fashion, watch it come up a couple inches short.
So, I think I've shared this on the pod already, but I have a confessional about that Game 6.
Oh, no.
I don't think you did share this on the pod.
Well,
We've alluded to it because I know about it, and I've given you tons of crap about it.
So I was at the game. Me and my cousin were at the game, and after the second period, like, we just kind of looked at each other. I was so disappointed, and I'm just like, what do you want to do? Like, I can tell you how this story ends, but it's up to you. It's just like I generally give the guest the option of deciding if we want to stay or go. And then he was just like, and he's only 18. He was just like, nah, we can go to Reed's and you can cash in on the 2-for-1s. I was like,
what a guy. You're a good wingman.
I was like, all right, this is why we get along. So we come in here in the third period, and they're just putting that on. We're like, okay, if they win this, we can't tell anyone we ever did this. We were at the game. It was the greatest thing ever. And it was really cool. Like, we thought they scored the tying goal. Like, the whole bar was high-fiving each other. But
man.
You can never really tell, I guess.
I feel bad for laughing across from you. At least they didn't win, which is a weird sentence to say.
The other thing is, we were leaving, like, we kind of we were sitting in the middle of the row. So as we're leaving, like, the lady sitting next to us, she's going, "You're really leaving?" And I looked at her and I said, "Yeah, I know this story and how it will end. Like, they'll give you some false hope, and then they'll lose." And
which is actually exactly what happened. So
you were right. You were wrong.
Yeah. But it's still just like, that was not. I don't like to tell that, but I'll share that.
I was going to say the correct answer was to go get a bunch more beer and sit down and just sit through the last period.
Oh, right.
Once you added you were with an 18-year-old, now I get it.
And the beauty of that was, we came in here, so I had 4 beers for what would have cost me 1 inside the X.
No kidding.
So it all worked out.
Oh, man.
The game didn't, but...
Yeah, because you missed it. That was when they first started Let's Go Crazy.
Yeah, so I never heard them play Let's Go Crazy
until this season. So
I had to wait. I had to wait till October. That was my punishment. That's all I wanted. I wanted to hear it played once. I didn't get that.
No, you got shut out.
So I don't know. I had kind of a few things written down just to remind myself of what to ask. But so I guess we kind of covered your general thoughts on the Wild so far. Just kind of a weird season. I don't know how much of them you've actually gotten to see with all your other doings.
I still pay attention quite a bit and go sort of back and forth between watching them and thinking, wow, this team is much better than what I've seen before. They continue to find ways to win. Devin Dubnyk is what we saw.
He's slightly above average.
And then I still look at some things, some stats that make me a little more hesitant. And I I don't know. Like, the shooting percentage concerns me because I don't know a team that is largely similar, with the exception of Stahl. Did they suddenly learn to shoot a lot better, or is this, a little too high and is going to come back to earth? So whenever I get down on the team from some of that stuff and some of the 5-on-5 stats, then you look at goal differential and you watch them play, and I don't know. So I guess I go kind of back and forth on that. They're definitely better than last season, though. I think the only question is, are they legitimately upper echelon top 2 teams in the Western Conference?
Yeah, I think there's some regression that was due, especially when we saw numbers that Dubnyk had. And we have seen them come down, just kind of ease down slightly.
Yeah.
And the shooting percentage, again, that's probably the same thing, going to regress, maybe ease down slightly as the season goes on, but you see a lot of the goals they're scoring. I mean, it's a lot of odd man rushes. They're getting. We never saw odd man rushes like this before, and I think with Boudreau they've run a forward really high in the zone quite a bit this year, from what I've noticed, and that's helped a ton. I mean, it feels like every other goal is a 2-on-1 or a clean breakaway
and think of how many more goals they'd had if Eric Stahl could hit on just a quarter of them.
Yeah.
What I've been amazed with watching them is, and this was completely unfair to have this perception of Bruce Boudreau, but I had the perception of him as a high-tempo offensive coach. But to see the system that he's put in place in the defensive end, they're a much better defensive team than I realized they would be. And, of course, we knew that the defensemen were good and that they were a defensive team in the past. But I don't think Bruce Boudreau got enough credit for how good his team was defensively in Anaheim, because people look to Perry and Getzlaf and their big names.
Yeah, that was actually something I looked up the stats on Boudreau after he was hired and wrote an article about it this summer, and it was like, I'm expecting fire wagon hockey numbers, like leading the league in shots, lower end of the pack in shots allowed. He's actually been, I don't remember exactly what it was, but he's been top 10 in shots allowed per game pretty much his entire coaching career.
Unfairly,
which is
so many people
crazy
have
to
the
think
vision of him as like Ovechkin scoring 50 goals and being minus 35.
Right, exactly.
And that's how they envision him coaching, which is not the case.
And it's something that I brought up on Saturday when we were talking to Heather Rule about it. Is like, well, his goaltending has never really been that good. I mean, he was with Washington before Holtby, or right as Holtby came in, basically. He was trying to win with Michael Neuwirth and Semyon Varlamov, not good Avalanche 2014 version. And then in Anaheim, it was, Jonas Hiller isn't really anything all that special, and Frederik Andersen is, he had some good seasons, but wasn't anything super special. So I think that's how he gets that knock for being that offensive, offense kind of coach, when really, you're right. His defense is actually really impressive.
It just felt like he never had that number one goalie.
Yeah.
Like he always had to flip between the two, and he doesn't really have that option here. Like even if he wanted one, like Dubnyk's obviously his guy, but if he wants to give him a night off, like it sounds like he has tomorrow night against Edmonton.
Cross your fingers.
Yeah, you kind of sit there and go, well, I hope we can hang 5 goals on Edmonton, because we're going to need all of them.
Well, with Kemper, it's not even just the amount to me. It's whenever you watch him, whenever there's a big moment or a tight game, it just feels like you can count down the minutes until, all right, is Kemper going to allow one a soft one at the 8-minute mark, or the 7-minute mark, or the 6-minute mark?
Whatever the last game he was in, I want to say maybe the Dallas game, was that?
I know the game.
No, he's been in one since then.
The opponent.
He's just won like the entire third period. I'm literally just cringing inside, because any shot on goal is just like, is he going to stop this? Like, normally I don't have that feeling, but just when he's in the goal and it's close, then that general uneven feeling exists.
Even Dubnyk last season, you could count on him every single game for a goal that would be written off as weird or fluky, but at some point, if you're allowing it every game, how fluky is it?
Right.
And that's what he was last season, which, he was still an average goalie, but they weren't going to win the Western Conference with that goaltending.
No. I thought he was he did all right in the playoffs. It just the team in front of him was so banged up and deflated, and then we found out he was playing with that broken finger or knuckle or whatever. That still kind of hampers him now, but I don't know.
He was just last year. It seemed like he was wildly inconsistent. I mean, he was unbelievable in December. And then January, obviously, the whole entire team basically took a crap. So, he had decent numbers in there, and then February he was like almost flat out bad. And then in March, I think he was the first star of the NHL in March. He was like a 930 or 940 save percentage, somewhere in that range. And but this year, it's like he's just been on that high the whole time. Right. He hasn't cratered at all, and then we just keep on, kind of waiting for that to happen for the numbers to correct more or less, but. It just hasn't happened. It's just been that steady, 930-ish save percentage the entire season, which, not a lot of people saw coming, really.
I wonder if he was sitting at the All-Star game in L.A., just thinking back for a moment to what it was like when he played behind the Edmonton Oilers defense, as he's hanging out by the pool, like drinking a pina colada in Los Angeles. Like,
as far as the 3-and-3
I've got
game,
it made now.
As far as the 3-and-3 game, when it probably felt very familiar to him, like the whole getting hung out to dry by your team. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yep. Okay.
That's weird you referenced that. I made that reference on Twitter yesterday at the end of the game when I said I hope Dubnyk's Oilers flashback ends with this game here. Mm-hmm. But.
Maybe that's why he signed that long-term deal.
No
Don't
kidding.
ever send me back there, please.
I think I thought he does have like a limited no-trade clause. I could be wrong, but I think there was just a running joke that it only included one team. That was Edmonton.
Can't say they blame him.
So anyway, we kind of talked about boost per draw. Like, I don't know... Again, like how closely you kind of read all the stuff he says, but just to me, just sitting there reading all the quotes from him just on a daily basis, it's thoroughly enjoyable. There's always one that just makes you, laugh, just because he's pretty straight and he'll have a pretty sarcastic remark mixed in there, but. You kind of bummed you're not totally around him on a daily basis because he seems like the type of guy you'd want to cover every day.
Absolutely, and not just that, but coming from Mike Yeo, who I liked and got along with, but having said that,
there were just a lot of
hear the same thing at 12 straight practices.
A lot of generic lines.
I told Russo, I saw him last week, and I told Russo, this must be like the most amazing part of your career. You can show up to practice, have no idea what you're going to write about, turn your recorder on, and just be like, all right, Bruce,
go to town.
What is it today? Have at it. What a treat I think it must be to cover him. Even, his stuff at the All-Star games, just few people I've ever even met or heard talk are as quick-witted as he is, quick with one-liners, and can joke about anything, including, and this is, I think, the best part, the players on his team.
Yeah.
Well, you did have the pleasure of covering Bryz for a limited amount of time, so that's.
Thank you.
I mean, not the same
for
thing,
a limited amount of time, and the most enjoyable amount of time, the greatest, however many months ever. And the best part was, it wasn't just that stretch at the end of. I can't even get my years right.
I think it was
2013,
14.
It wasn't just the end of that. But that they also brought him back for training camp the next year when, there was really no need for him.
That's when Harding hurt himself.
Right.
So
and Kemper had...
Yeah, Kemper was a contract over.
Yeah, that's when he's like, I'm going to the KHL.
I'm going to the KHL. Right. You have fun with that, Darcy. Yes. Good luck.
It was such a treat, too, just that he was back, and he was back, in the minor league locker room, if I recall, in that training camp, and just BSing with these 19-year-olds who are like, who the hell is this guy?
Yeah,
and he went on some of the preseason road trips with them, which brought out one of my favorite memories of Bryzgalov. Was Russo and I had gone to Pittsburgh they were playing the Penguins in some preseason game that really probably didn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but it was preseason, so we were there for whatever reason. And Russo and I were going to a play. I can't even remember what play now, but we were going to a play which sounds weird to say. It's the only time I swear that Russo and I have gotten to a play together.
Of all the stories I've heard from Russo, I don't think I've ever heard him go with, yeah, we were going to a play.
You know, it's a good story when it starts with we're going to a play together.
Me and Graff decided just to check out the Book of Mormon one night.
That's actually what it was.
Awesome. That's even better.
Serious.
That's even better.
Oh, God. Now I remember what it was. That is correct. Plays at like 7, so at 6, we're like, all right, let's go get a drink across the street. So we go across the street from whatever this theater is in Pittsburgh, go up, sit at the bar, get a couple drinks, and I turn around. One of us had to go to the bathroom or something, but we turn around, and there on a stool, like facing away from the bar, facing away from everybody else, is Ilya Bryz sitting by himself with one of the old school Coca-Cola bottles
awesome.
And a glass of just ice, and he's pouring it in like sip by sip, his Coca-Cola. And he's got a thing of mac and cheese, and he's reading on his iPad some sort of Russian news.
Sure.
And so just, we've had a drink at this point. We're like, hey, Bryz, what's going on? And I think he probably knew that it was about the end. We knew it was about the end, so we could be a little more relaxed with him. It's still preseason. Who cares? So he's asking us what we're about to do, so we're about to go to a play. But then he pulls up his iPad and he shows us the Russian news he's reading. Can you believe this about Ukraine and what Putin's doing? And I remember looking at Russo like, you're carrying this conversation. I am not about to get into Russian politics with Ilya Bryz. As much as that story sounds fun to tell for years to come, I'm not going to be able to hold my own, so have at it. So, yes, he was a treat to cover.
Well, and now he's making his foray into your realm. He's roving reporter for the Players Tribune at the All-Star Game.
What a treat that was to see. Yeah.
Just fantastic.
He and Ryan Suter together, who probably, I don't know if I could come up with two more
polar opposites. Yep.
But seeing those two just chat for old time's sake was great. If there is a former goalie I'd like to see with a mic in his hands, just 24, just put a camera and a mic, and I don't know what he's going to come up with, but just let him go.
Was that the training camp? I can't remember if it was him or some other guy, but he just did nothing that entire offseason leading into training camp.
He just
was like, yeah, I was on the couch the whole summer.
Yeah.
I think one of the first questions was, so you've been skating much? He goes, no. Oh, okay. When was the last time you skated? When was our last game? Oh, so you're not kidding. You really have not been skating. No, but I'll get it back. All right.
He was at home in Russia just counting that Flyers money, just going through all the checks that Philadelphia's written on.
And he's still got another 10 years left on the payroll.
Something like that,
he's good. He's really good.
He was at the All-Star game probably chirping Wayne Simmons like, listen to what your owner is paying.
Yeah.
You think you're underpaid? Get a load of this.
It's fantastic.
Do you have any questions? Or
it's a story we kind of brought up, and obviously we should get it on record because the NHL, or not the NHL, but they announced today that the Barclays is looking to kick out the Islanders after the, I think they said 18-19 season is when they have their first out clause.
With such rich tradition, you hate to see it.
But it segues well into you had a slight beef with said Islanders fan base on Twitter.
Yes, that overreactive bunch that gets upset over nothing. Yes, I recall that. It was my first trip to Barclays, which was not what I had envisioned. I hated going to Long Island. It was in the middle of nowhere. You stayed in a crappy hotel. You walked across the parking lot. I was always in a bad mood there. I remember once...
Meanwhile, Russo was skipping along the sidewalk, just elated to be at the Coliseum.
Yes. Telling me all about his childhood and what games you went to, and you got to go see this. So he tells me that, in the parking lot that separates the hotel, the one hotel, in the arena, the one arena, and then just empty space, are a bunch of autograph seekers who stand out there and just wait for Suter and Bryz and these guys to come out. And because apparently they have no idea what Wild players look like other than Zach Parise and Ryan Suter, I'm walking out of the rink after morning skate like, all right, just 18 more hours in Long Island and I'm out of here. And then they start, as I'm walking to the hotel, all these autograph seekers come hounding with binders and pictures and pucks and jerseys and throwing markers in my face. And I'm looking at them
That's
like,
awesome.
no, you don't want me, And they're like, yeah, just one quick autograph. I'm like, I promise you don't want mine. I'm like, no, please. So finally I was like, all right, screw it. Scribbled a name on this jersey, defacing all these valuable signatures, and then wrote like number 69. There you go. Good luck. But anyway, so after that great experience, they moved to Brooklyn. I don't love Brooklyn either in my visit there, and I hate sounding like the snobby press person of, well, there's no press box and all this stuff. I don't know if I could listen to a worse complaint.
Yeah.
However, I'll just mention that there is no press box. And
at a brand new arena like that?
At a brand new,
it wasn't built for hockey.
Right, but you heard about Joe Louis and you're like, okay, yeah, I could totally see that.
Sure.
But then the Barclays, I suppose, because all the basketball presses at courtside.
Now that you mention
that, they took up too much time, making sure that every hockey seat was going to have a great view. So you can understand it from that perspective.
Whoops.
Well, they did have two really good seats. I think they were leather seats. They have a seat belt and everything. There's a radio
inside a white SUV.
Well, clearly they have seats too close to the ice because they have plenty of glass bangers. So, random side question: have you gotten lost trying to find the press box at Joe Louis Arena?
I've gotten lost trying to find a press box in just about every arena.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, Nate. If you know Nate Wells, he's been on our show, and he shared the story when he was covering the Big Ten tournament of how he couldn't find this mythical door that led to the press box, and he spent an eternity, what felt like, trying to find it to get up there.
Well, he was probably sifting through the large crowds that were at the so I can see why that was tough. That's another tough one, and not a good one. But the Barclays, you would think that with a new building, they would have put some thought into it. Not that, I think arenas need to really be catering to the press. Who cares? But maybe like a row of seats would have been nice.
Yeah. Right. What am I not? Because I felt like that was just specifically built for the NBA, and then they spent like a summer just redoing the inside just so they could make it accessible for hockey. But I could be wrong, but I felt like they're like, oh, we could redo Barclays Center and have hockey here. It'd be a great idea. And, well, here we are.
Yeah, revolutionary idea of seats that only see one zone.
Yeah.
Nobody wants the Islanders.
Really focus on the defensive zone.
Now they're writing letters to Glendale, Arizona, like, how do you guys get this done? How does this work exactly? How do you kick them out? I don't get this. Well, it's obviously retrofitted because the scoreboard is like over one of the blue lines. It hangs
over the blue line, yeah.
And then they've got the freaking SUV, and then they have a bunch of like obstructed view seats too. I know, like they've got like a weird overhang, like which is fine at a college arena, like St. Cloud kind of has the same thing going on with the it's like a horseshoe shape kind of one end, but not at an NHL arena. Like that's just kind of weird, but yeah, so they obviously didn't think that through, and everyone, I don't think there was a single hockey person that was like, sweet, Brooklyn, all right.
Great idea.
Yeah,
nothing's going to go wrong here.
It's a storied history of the Long Island. Let's just shuttle that right into the big city. And
sad to see such a great idea fall.
Yeah, and I'm sure the Rangers couldn't have been thrilled about it. I mean, they're probably... Granted, it'd take you 45 minutes, but it's probably only about 2 miles from Madison Square Garden.
Yep.
And, that's got to kind of infringe on their territory a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I know they are revamping the Coliseum as soon as the Islanders move out, and they were going to make it, more modern and stuff for hosting, events going forward. And it'll be interesting to see if things are good enough for them to return to there, or if we see something else crazy happen. I don't know if that team's going to move, but...
Yeah, I think that's probably the right move to go back.
Yeah.
Maybe I can say that now that I'm not traveling with the team. I don't have to go there. But, yes, I think that's the proper home for them.
Yeah. No, I would agree. It just makes too much sense, if that's even the fact. I mean, they said they might be kicking him out, and it's 2 seasons from now. And like I said, we've heard it out of Arizona for the last, 15 years or something like that. Right. So there's certainly nothing set in stone there.
Right. So I don't know, kind of going back in a wild discussion, I guess you kind of mentioned the Bryz story in Pittsburgh, but is there maybe another favorite story of yours that you'd like to share that you actually can share? I'm sure there's a lot of non-air stories, but
I'm trying to think of what would be a better one. Is there a player or a season we should work off?
Not really. I mean, it can be about, player or management or what have you, but just to
let's talk crap about management.
So the players,
yeah, exactly.
I don't even know where to start with a funny story about the players. But just to riff off whatever stories I can think of off the top of my head, one of my favorite days was visiting Ryan Suter in Wisconsin, going and seeing his
giant farm
and everything that he has. But the point of all this was we went out to lunch that day to a place kind of like where we are now at Tom Reed's. It's just it was even smaller than this. It was like a hole-in-the-wall tavern, beers, burgers, cool place, but not
like every other building in Wisconsin.
Right,
so
exactly, yes, and brats.
Right.
But we go in, and we've mentioned during the interview that we talked about this morning. We talked over really a year about his not great eating habits and how he prefers whole milk and all this stuff, but I always kind of took it with a grain of salt, which, by the way, I find revolting. Just the thought of drinking whole milk like in a glass. I'm just picturing like creamer and just drinking creamer.
It's close.
But anyway, maybe that's how you keep on weight after when he was playing 32 minutes a game.
Yeah.
But we get there, and I kind of think that all of this has been overblown. Like, yeah, you have a gallon of milk in your fridge, but you also have a couple of kids.
Right.
And we sit down at the tavern, and the waitress comes over, and she's like, "Oh, hey, Ryan." And he's brought his little son, Brooks. And she's like, "The usual?" And he's like, "Yeah. And I'll probably add a large fry and a chicken gumbo soup." And so she brings all this over, and then I said, "Is that it?" So we have soup and fries and all this food, and I'm like, "Wow, we're going to town." And then that was just like the appetizer to what was the usual, which was this giant like double cheeseburger with bacon and mayonnaise. I had to be rolled out of there, and that was the day that I decided, all right, he's not full of crap.
Yeah.
This is real.
Yeah, but to your point, he probably is. That's how you keep weight. I mean, you're basically like,
I guess if Michael Phelps can also eat 8,000 calories a day.
Exactly. He's got
maybe his is added by other influences.
his is enhanced somehow, is what you're saying? Fair enough.
Whole milk.
Yeah.
I worked at a coffee shop for a long time, and that's the base milk that you use to make lattes and everything, basically. You use whole milk unless otherwise prescribed. So, but I think it's a little bit different. I think the heat must kind of thin it out a little bit because you don't really notice it with lattes and mochas and such because it's kind of a thick drink
at least
already.
You're taking down the bitterness of espresso, but just whole milk.
Yeah, no, in a glass. There have been a couple of times at the coffee shop where I had it in a glass, and I was like, man, this is
like a half solid.
Yeah, it's like this is almost a shake. It's just it's a bit much.
So I'm just kind of thinking of some other questions to ask on the fly. How do you feel about the logo in the middle of the locker room floor? Because I know Edmonton put theirs on the ceiling,
right?
So
which
they don't,
trend,
which should be starting a trend here. But there
have been many jokes from many sports writers about defacing in one way or another the logo. It has calmed down in the Louder. Maybe things have changed since I haven't been in there this season, but it has calmed down from the days of Cal Clutterbuck being a complete crazy person about it and yelling that he was going to charge media members $200 as if media members were just overflowing with $100 bills out of their wallet.
Cal Clutterbuck, who I will point out will be making the same cap hit as Eric Stahl next season.
Every chance we get
to come, if I recall. Now that I remember that extension, 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, the Islanders, they got to tighten the purse strings when it comes to guys who can score, but when it comes to guys like Clutterbuck, you better open up the wallet.
Yes, well, that's for the nice building that they play in, the revenues are pouring in. What was the question? Oh, the
logo.
Logo on the floor. I don't think people really care. Like Cal Clutterbuck, I think, was about the only player, maybe Torrey Mitchell a little bit. I think they were about the only players that genuinely cared. Players will walk on it with skates if people aren't really looking. The fact that they can, so they wheel in the giant laundry barrel, basically, that they throw all the jerseys and socks in and everything. And the fact that that can sit on the logo, to me tells me that we should be able to walk on the logo. If all the dirty crap is pouring all over
hockey equipment doesn't smell good at all by any means.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, I get that the bottom of my shoes aren't great, but neither is your jersey. So, and in a lot of locker rooms, it's no big deal. But the Wild still have a locker room that Jacques Lemaire sort of created and envisioned, where it's so small and cramped. And the idea was all these players are going to have to sit on top of each other, basically, because we want them to be a team. But now I think players have learned that they can be a team without sitting on top of each other in the locker room, to the point where the visiting locker room at the X is bigger than the home locker room. So I think they'll probably renovate that in the coming years.
That's kind of a thing I've been hearing is, they're just, the Wild need to make some kind of renovations to the X and that department, and it helps that they're getting a practice facility now downtown, which will help a lot.
We'll see if that logo is on the ceiling.
Yeah, one can only hope. Although I will admit that it is taking the place of Macy's, which I have a lot of, actually just the restaurant inside Macy's, I have a lot of fond memories of as a kid, so I'm kind of salty about it, but I haven't been there in years, so not really.
Well, in the Minneapolis,
I also don't know why I'm sharing that.
And the Minneapolis Macy's is closing like it already has, or it is soon too. It's kind of a weird. I mean, I'm sure they're not going to do anything with that space. Like, it was weird when basically what was like GameWorks and the Shout House got turned into the Timberwolves practice facility, but I guess that's probably a better use for it than creating like a revolving door for restaurants, I suppose.
And I want to point out that I like that location for the Shout House, and I don't like where it's at now.
I concur. I thought that I went to the Shout House like last week, and I hadn't been there in a long time. I was like, oh, crap, I forgot this is where I moved to.
And
like, it's just the overflow crowd from like Sneaky Pete's up the road and then Cowboy Jack's down below it.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting crowd. And my biggest thing was because like me and my friends, we only get there on the weekends now. Yeah. And so, like, if you don't get there, like, right away at whatever time they start, like, 7, like, you just get shoveled over to the bar on the left side and you really can't see anything. And it just, I don't know. I much preferred the old place where it was a lot more open and the bar was just kind of, like, centralized in the back. And I don't know.
I'm glad this podcast took a turn for
Shout House reviews. We're not going to get any kind of sponsorship deal from the Shout House. I can guarantee that.
This is definitely going to be titled the Shout House edition.
You hear that? Howl at the Moon moved to Minneapolis, and you got some sponsors waiting.
Right. But yeah, I don't know.
Wow, Howl at the Moon. I haven't thought of that in a long time.
I can move us on from the Shout House if everyone's okay with that.
Begrudgingly.
Unfortunately, we got to stop talking about the Shout House, guys. I'm sorry. So there's like a lot this season made of the the relationship with the team and the writers and the blogs and the climate that what was with that kind of stuff in mind, what was your approach to covering the team as one of the credentialed major media beat writers? What was your approach with all of that all encompassing?
I guess just from like a beat perspective, or from the perspective of
nice. Sorry, this car just totally backed into this other car.
That's
so
awesome. That's a tiny car too. How did he pull that off?
He's quite terrible.
Oh man,
Honda Civic, I think.
Yeah, that's
going into a 14-foot spot.
Yeah.
I'm also trying to stall to give Chad time to think about his answer.
Much appreciated. Keep going. What other cars are hitting each other?
No, but there's certain things that the beat writers write about, and there's certain things that the columnists write about, and then there's certain things that the bloggers write about, and there's certain things that other bloggers write about. So what was your approach to what were you trying to...
He did it again!
Oh, awesome!
I swear he's not just stalling. I swear.
No, this is really happening. It's absolutely brilliant. It's right in front of our table. Yes, turn the wheel.
This is
probably want to
this
troll
is
ahead
so
now.
energetic. I'm so sorry. This car has backed into trying to parallel park and has backed into a car twice now. And again,
this is good radio, by the way.
Yeah, it's compelling. But somebody will want me to describe this further on Twitter tomorrow.
That's
I swear.
true. Yeah, they'll want pictures and stuff.
To answer your question, basically, I wanted to have sort of the news, the injuries, and stuff like that, but I didn't want that to bog me down. I would have preferred, and who knows, maybe I wasn't successful, but I would have preferred to have a feature or something else that others didn't, that took some time, even if that meant the sacrifice of being first with the lines at morning skate or something like that. Yeah. No, I'll be the first to say I probably wasn't always successful as the Honda Civic to the left of us checks out their damage. But that was sort of the goal, and I think hopefully that'll be the goal. I plan to jump on and help out with some Wild coverage whenever Gophers basketball ends, since they'll be probably the talk of the town.
Sometime in March. Wait, no, probably not.
Not late March. I think I'll have plenty of time on the Wild before the playoffs start. So hopefully, I mean, I think our goal, really, at the Pioneer Press, since we're the smaller paper and don't have all of the resources as the Star Tribune, is that if we get beat on something small, that's okay. If it means that we can sort of zig while other people zag and try to. I emphasize the trying part. Provide something that others don't have.
That's a kind of a weird question into that, but like the Wild have an insane schedule in the last 20 games of the year, so I'm guessing we'll probably see you in there at some point, because I
think so.
I'm sure the regular guy Dane is probably gonna he'll probably need a day off at some point.
At some point, the Wild are bound to make up these 4 games in hand that I keep reading about and seeing in the standings.
That's something that just grinds my gears. Is we have this every year. Is the Wild in October and November? The Wild will have 3-4 days off almost weekly in between games. They let the schedule just totally get by them, and then they have to make up for it in the last part of the season. And it just feels like every year that's
back-to-backs, home road back-to-backs. I was just looking at the schedule before I came over here, and I noticed that they're in Nashville. I think it's April 1st. So maybe I can talk my way into that. Hey, guys, the Pioneer Press, you're probably way too tired. I'll do you guys a solid, and I'll take that one. Send me out early, because it's going to be a big Central game. I'm going to need to prep for that one.
Interesting. I always say Nashville would be one of the top of my list of road trips I need to take. Yeah. I'm not totally sure why. But,
you're never sure why until you go. I went I've heard good things, but how good can it be? And it lived up to everything I had hoped for. That should be on the top of the list, I think.
Yeah. Nice.
That, New York, agree. Boston, Montreal. Maybe that's the East Coast part of me coming out there. But
you're biased New Englanders.
Right.
Yeah.
So kind of on that note, another just kind of random question. When you're growing up, did you have a favorite hockey team out there? Because you're from New Hampshire.
So I lived in. I don't know if I can admit this, but I lived in Dallas during the 90s.
Oh boy!
I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at somebody else for taking what was ours.
No!
I won't admit that my first NHL game was in Dallas to the Stars game, and I won't admit that I was cheering them on as they won a Stanley Cup. I won't admit any of that. But then,
you're saying all this, and my beer is empty.
Hang on, we need some shots.
Yeah. Somebody get Giles a beer.
And then I moved to New England and slowly started to adapt to that, but I never really was a diehard Bruins fan. Followed college hockey, went to the University of New Hampshire, liked college hockey a lot. Liked the Bruins, would watch the Bruins. They'd always become a big deal when they'd make the playoffs, and that was when they were on their upswing and into the Stanley Cup. So it was fun to watch them, but no, I was never a diehard Bruins fan or anything like that before I came here.
Sure.
So since you're a big University of New Hampshire guy, I'm sure you're more than willing to talk about the 2003 title game. My guy, Tom Vanek. Have you heard of him?
Once or twice.
No, I'm just kidding.
We're
Dallas.
from Minnesota. We have to bring up any kind of victories we can possibly scrape and
Yeah,
scrounge. We've got.
victories are rare here.
I mean, the Gophers men hockey is basically like a professional sport here, and so
yeah, but you wouldn't know with the amount of people that go now.
yeah, I'm not talking about the North Star Cup because
No, I'm just saying in
That's a
general.
well, yeah,
half of
any
Mariucci's
other-
empty now.
or any other Big Ten game for that matter.
Well, wait till the Big Ten tournament. That's where it really gets going.
Right? Yeah. Jeez.
Maybe in 10 years on campus. Anyway.
Well, when you have a 6-team tournament, that's when you know it's good. When you have 6 teams in the conference,
Right.
That's how you bring out the
Everyone's
parity.
involved.
Right.
It's all inclusive, I guess.
All right, so I got a couple more questions. We kind of generically ask our guests when they join us on the show, since this is kind of our recurring bits. The first of which is, I'm not going to ask her just one because for us it's impossible. So
Impossible.
if you had a Mount Rushmore of favorite hockey jerseys, what would you roll with? Just NHL jerseys, I should say.
Off the top 3 were quick.
Sure.
You're not looking for years
Just-
of these jerseys.
No, just any. It can be any NHL jersey from at any point.
3 came quick, which were Chicago, Montreal, and Boston.
Okay.
1 biased.
Well,
Chicago, I feel like I wish you didn't have to put it in, but you almost do.
Yeah.
Always loved Montreal. That would probably be my number 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then after that, for a 4th, it'd be between, and I'm not just sucking up here, it'd be between the North Stars, the Red Wings, and maybe because it's my childhood, I always liked the horrible Dallas Stars jerseys, the awful ones that had ST, and then the top of the
star.
the star
The
was
stars.
the ARS, which were not very good sweaters, but I just had a thing for those.
Yeah.
They used to have one of those hanging in here. I think it got bumped for
There's
that.
hole in one. You can't see the front of it.
I think it got bumped for that one with 88 over there that I hate.
I'm glad you brought up the Blackhawks because as Minnesota fans, it's kind of like you're trained to hate them, and I've said before, and hopefully I don't get punched for it anytime soon. But I actually was a Blackhawks fan before the Wild, obviously. So they're the closest team that we had. I mean, I moved around a little bit. I was from Minnesota, but moved around a little bit. Came back to Minnesota in '96. Long before they even announced we were getting a team. So, like the Blackhawks, but I think credit where credit's due. And we've talked about this in the podcast. That's a pretty good-looking hockey jersey. I mean, it's really, it's just
Clean,
detailed
it's
enough.
simple.
Yeah.
That's all we ask for in hockey jerseys. Is we're snobs here.
We are.
We just want simple things with hockey jerseys, and
What about an orange Islanders jersey?
like that.
Now I feel bad. Now we're piling on
That monstrosity. Or we can make this.
It's like an anti-Russo podcast right now.
We could probably
just
title
railing
this-
on the Islanders over
Hang
and
on,
over again.
Panthers.
Oh yeah.
Is there Panthers? No Panthers jerseys.
See, I was hoping one of your 4th finalists would have been the Mighty Ducks. Then we could have been best friends. But
Well, I noticed your phone background, and I should have sucked up. I don't know what was wrong with me. I knew better than that.
I'm a sucker for nostalgia. So the Mighty Ducks was my team when there was no Minnesota team,
Sure.
since some team from the South took that. But no, we haven't talked about them at all.
No.
But anyway, that's No, I agree, and I think we've mentioned on the podcast before, and we've talked about the Bruins jerseys, that they're 81 to I think it's 97 or something like that.
Yeah.
Those are probably some of my favorite sets of jerseys of all time.
Well,
it's a good look.
The Bork era.
But then they really got weird with the jerseys.
They kind of
Alternate
did.
now, the all black with the bear.
The all gold with the bare head.
that was talk about weird. But yeah, I go back and forth on the black one with the brown fuzzy bear on it. you know,
It's not my favorite. I like the classic spoked beef.
Right. Yeah. But they could do a lot worse, I feel like, with an alternate jersey. Like, there's a lot of teams out there that have some horrific alternate jerseys. Not to pile on the Islanders again, but but, like, they could do much worse. But, yeah, the classic spoked beef, I mean, that's just obviously the way to go. And I'm with you on the whole Montreal thing. I
feel like I took the cheap way out.
Well, to going with original
Montreal
6,
Chicago.
Yeah, but that's honestly the thing. That's something that we end up pounding on. I mean, we talked about jerseys a lot on this podcast, way more than probably we should. But it always comes back to what jerseys are really good, the original 6. What jerseys are really bad, third jerseys from the 90s. Yep. And it's just like this is kind of like a blanket statement that you can make pretty much at all times.
Or a Tumblr of all the alternates from the 90s, right?
I wrote an article I did an article on the top 10 worst jerseys of all time, and I think 8 or 9 of them were 90s third jerseys because it was just shark jumping after shark jumping after it was so bad.
I like the list except for the one, and then you called me out. Giles, don't be mad.
Oh, I think it was it the Wild Wing jersey?
Yeah.
The Mighty Ducks Wild Wing jersey. That's one of those things. It was kind of like the LA Kings Burger King jersey, where it's like it's so ugly, but at the same time, like you have like this kind of like soft. It's like Sloth from the Goonies. Like you had like this soft spot for it because it's so hideously ugly.
That's a good question. I like that one.
That's kind of our thing. Yeah. And then I don't. Do you have any other questions, or before I finish with the most heated one?
Okay. I forgot. I should have known you were going to ask that.
No, you can go ahead. Okay.
You can go again. We can
another one of our random. I probably should have given you a heads up on this. This is one of our random.
This is something we're
bits.
known for. Across the board,
people don't think of us as a hockey podcast. People think of us as a food podcast because of this question. Before I forget, we're going to change the episode title to "Piling on the Islanders."
Good call.
So, what is your stance on soup? Standalone? Do you consider it a meal, or do you need something with it? You need something else, and then soup as a side. How do you feel on this?
This is a pretty cut and dry one that is quite obvious, and I'm hoping you guys also know the correct answer.
Well, we differ, so one of us is going to be your best friend.
We have knife fights over this on a daily basis on Twitter.
Soup is quite obviously a side used to eat with something else. Even like clam chowder growing up in New England, as thick and hearty as it can get. And I still wouldn't want just a bowl of clam chowder to be my meal. Oh, gross.
Outstanding.
Tomato basil with a sandwich. Clam chowder with anything else. Any soup. Chicken noodle. Like, can you eat chicken noodle and just have that be your whole meal?
Yep.
Yeah, you can. It all started one day because he tweeted out, I think it was a picture or something, but something about having soup for lunch. And so I said, fantastic, what else did you have? Right. And he goes, literally verbatim, F you, I love soup. And so then on the next podcast, we're like, all right, we got to talk about this. And then from there on, it's just become like this. There's a bowl of soup on the tag of our logo. Like, it's just become...
on a diet?
No.
Do you feel full after?
I don't know. I'm just fine with it.
He's just a soup fanatic. He just loves soup.
I love soup.
I'm all for a good tomato basil or a corn chowder.
That's what I said.
I'm not going to be full.
Right. I respect its place.
So much of clam chowder, it's like half and half in my system.
Like, I can eat it at work, just a bowl of soup, and then I don't really think about it. So maybe that helps, but I've never really been like, oh, I need something to go with this soup that I'm bringing to work with me.
I think the only time I could order just soup is if I had just eaten a big meal and then met somebody somewhere and they were getting something like, I'll have a cup of your soup of the day, whatever.
Sure.
Chili, I think, is the only thing that you might have a case for. And even that, it's questionable.
Yeah, we've talked about that. Chili is kind of like the slippery slope of soups. Like, we pretty much don't consider it a soup.
Yeah,
I don't think
if that's the case,
there's too much protein in there.
Chili's its own thing.
Yeah,
its own genre.
All right, I'm with you on that then. I'm glad we're tackling the important issues.
Yeah, this is what we do on this podcast.
This is good. This is good. We might as well make Mount Rushmores for everything now. Now we're into the good stuff.
Yeah. Well, actually, thank God that commercial just played. I do have one more question. Did you see the NHL 100 list at all? Sort of, or just on Twitter? Okay.
Yeah, I only saw pictures of the guys there, and I saw like some of the debates. I still follow a lot of Boston people, so I saw people upset that Chara wasn't in it. How can Duncan Keith be in it if Chara's in it? This I don't feel as passionately about as Soup is aside.
Fire and daggers across the table.
I know. I'm enjoying this so much. Tremendous. Yeah.
What were your thoughts?
Everybody I've talked to, like, it's just like, I didn't mind the list, and then we got to the 2010 era, and then I really was like, this is not good. Like, they were so Blackhawks heavy. Like, and don't get me wrong, like, I think,
Keith.
yeah, they're all great players, but I just don't know if I'm ready to call them like one of the 100 best players to ever play the game.
Right.
When you've
How about
got
the Boston argument of Chara?
well, and that's a fair case. Like I was going to say, like you've got guys out there like Chara, Joe Thornton, Jerome McGinley, Henrik Lundqvist did not make the list, and I don't know that. It was aggravating, but then I just, I poured a stiff drink after, so I just made it all go away.
I feel like it's weird. I know you blew up about the Lundqvist thing because you're such a Lundqvist fan, but it's weird there's no current goalies on that list to me.
Right.
Like,
I think the last two goalies on the list were
Brodeur or
Hasek and your guy Wah.
Yeah, and which totally deserved, obviously, but because they were even years ahead of their time. But like, I don't know if it's just like almost like a reverse bias because like all of the best goalies statistically are playing right now.
Right.
Like because this is such a different era. It's not clutch and grab, but at the same time, like the save percentages are like I think of the top 20 save percentages ever in the NHL, like 18 of them are current goalies or something absurd like that. It's really crazy. But like even to, like you said, Lundqvist would make a ton of sense and probably deserve a list. Carey Price is making a pretty good argument to be on that list. Like it was very curious to me there wasn't a single current goaltender on the list.
On a side note, and I hate to transition to this, but I was just at my desk in the office and I was cleaning it out and getting rid of stuff, and I found a book in like one of the third drawers that I would never open. A book titled "Save by Wah." How the Avalanche returned from obscurity.
Oh my god!
So it was cool to open that and remember their Stanley Cup win from a couple of years ago and the consistent success that they've had every season since, and how they're firing on all cylinders this season.
Oh god, that's fantastic!
Man, that guy who wrote that book is one of my favorite human beings ever.
I mean, I haven't really tried, but I might be the only Minnesota Wild fan, especially blogger, that isn't blocked by Dater at this point, I'm pretty sure. Because I know that the list is long.
Is it?
Very long. Yeah, he's on the list.
Blocked.
Yeah, you might be. You don't even know.
I didn't even try to hold back. Like I generally try to be nice on Twitter. Like I don't try to be like in your face, whatever. Yeah, but with him, no, I just tossed my rules out the window. I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, but have you read his really good book?
No, I haven't. I was going to ask you as we were talking about the last goalies on the list.
For ripping on him. I just didn't think it was a book that should have been written for a team that lost.
And he wrote that during the season. Like it wasn't something that came out like years later. It was during that season. And
if a beat writer wants to come out with a book after a team wins the Stanley Cup and sort of document all that, I'm all for it. Even if they lose in the Stanley Cup, you might have an argument.
Right.
But not when you're a first-round exit.
God.
Well, and
I had to get a chuckle out of that. I apologize for ruining your conversation.
No, not at all. That's fantastic.
No. Never apologize for taking pot shots at anyone with that team.
Yeah, we're pretty anti-Avalanche here. But yeah, it's really weird because especially like during the season too. And obviously, Adrian Dater, not really an advanced stats kind of guy, but like everyone,
it was very obvious that they were not the team.
It was like the record for PDO, I think, is still standing. It's still them. Like it was just
amazing.
It was absurdly unsustainable what they were doing.
Even knowing all that, it's crazy to look back because even with all that, I still thought that they would be a decent team in the years to come.
Yeah, well, everyone
should have been
thought that, and they should have. Yeah,
of course, we all knew that they needed defensemen and stuff like that. Well, I say we all, except Sakic and some of the guys that were making
the guys that matter. Yeah,
the fact that looking back at that team, even knowing that they weren't as good as their record, a lot of us, I think, felt like they were going to be a good team for years to come.
Yeah.
Right, and I don't think we saw like Nathan McKinnon taking steps back. We saw him taking steps forward, and he was a really good player. Like
he was almost unstoppable in that series.
That series, the first 2 gams, I was convinced he was.
Eric Holla had to be the one to shut him down in that playoff series, and to his credit, he did a good job after those first 2 games, but. You just came out of that going, McKinnon's going to be one of the best players in the league for so long.
And so fast. Watching him in those first 2 games, anytime he got the puck, he was into the offensive zone and creating a chance.
And the other thing with that series was the Wild probably could have easily won in 5 had it not been for some horrendous officiating blunders. But
that game 5 is the one that stands out to me the most, where Coyle basically had an empty net goal and just got absolutely mugged. Like we talked about where I mentioned clutch and grab before. Like this wasn't even clutch and grab. This was borderline like assault. And then of course Colorado scores the game tying goal seconds later. So
I'm good with how that ended, though.
Yeah.
What series did you two enjoy more, that or the Blues?
Oh, Avalanche.
Yeah, the Avalanche series.
I'm biased because I actually flew out to Denver for Game 7, so I was there, and that's going to be hard to top.
That game will always stand out to me, not just because it was an awesome game, but because I remember thinking in the third period, I've never wanted to be a sports writer less than right now. 1-0, 1-1, 2-1, 2-2.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, just trying to come up with some story. Like, please, at this point, I don't give a crap who wins. Just somebody find a way to end this.
Okay, this will make you feel better. So after the game, the Pepsi Center was pitch silent except for the 100 Wild fans that were there. So as we're leaving, I'm high-fiving any Wild fan I could see within plain sight. So after what felt about 45 minutes of trying to get out of the Pepsi Center, because apparently there's only 2 exits in the arena, we finally get outside, and it is so dimly lit out on the I don't know what you call it, just
complex with Mile High.
Just like the side, literally the sidewalk outside of the arena, kind of like what you'd see out front of the X here, is so poorly lit, and they had concrete. I don't know if they still have. They had concrete pillars similar, to sit on, similar to what they had at the Metrodome.
Yeah.
And so, I'm high-fiving anyone. I'm also a few beers in. So all of a sudden, I see some guy, 50 feet away yell, yeah, go Wild. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go run and high-five this guy. So I run, and then all of a sudden I get clipped. So, I literally just go, so I'm just, all of a sudden I'm just, literally laying on this concrete pillar. And then I quick hop up, trying to brush it off, and I'm just that sort of hurt. And so then I carry on. We finally get in the car, and when I sit down, it didn't hit me till then that really hurts. So then I look at it.
That's really going to hurt.
Right. That's a huge gash on my leg.
Yeah.
So that's my story. That's just my little anecdote to make you feel better about having to come up with a story for that game.
Was.
Yeah.
I bet it would have been a great high five, though. Oh, man.
Yeah. So that's my story.
So you've been to Denver. You've been to, what was the other one you said? What is the best road venue that you've been to?
Well, I'm just finally starting to branch out into hockey of traveling. So I've been to Denver, and I went to Washington last year with some friends, and that's literally
had 2
it.
goals that game, if I recall.
The best part of that game was I had a friend who lived out there, so it was me and one other. We flew out there, and they don't follow hockey as closely as I do. Or I should say, they don't follow it at all. But they made the sacrifice to go to the game with me, because why not? So the Caps had a power play. I literally pointed at Ovechkin. I said, watch this guy. He's going to stand in that spot, not move an inch, and he's going to score a goal in the next minute. And in the next 45 seconds, he scored from that spot, and they were so impressed with the fact that I just called that. But so can anyone else who remotely follows hockey.
Exactly.
You don't mention that part.
No.
That number 8 is a really obscure player. Nobody knows who he is.
Nobody.
I just have seen
I'm going out on a limb here.
Right.
I'm going to make this really this long shot call right now.
I can't remember if it was last year or 2 years ago when he just lit them up for like 2 goals right there, same spot, same pass, same everything. I remember thinking, how could any team
I think it was last
game
year
and not be prepared to see this?
I think he scored a hat trick here last year, didn't he?
It was
at the X.
Yeah, when he was here, he just torched him, and I think he had just 1 goal in that game at Washington.
Yeah, because I feel like I watched that game, and they just they still ran like your prototypical box power play. And of course, they're on the strong side. There's Ovechkin over there on the weak side.
Waving his stick
every time. Yeah, beaver clapping the whole time. And it's just like, maybe you make an adjustment. I don't know. It could just be me. Maybe. And then so I'm watching this, and I'm, typical wild blogger, furiously tweeting about how stupid this game plan is. and then, of course, he scores a hat trick with 2 power play goals. And then the next game, they played against Chicago, and I don't know who it was specifically. It might have been Housey even. But they basically had a man-on-man, where they ran the box still, but there was a guy basically standing next to Ovechkin on the power play, just standing there the whole time. And, of course, he doesn't score. And it's just that sweet, sweet vindication moment for me. It was yes, I am smarter than an NHL hockey coach. Although it's for my favorite team, so that's probably not a great thing. This is not a good look for my team right now.
Yeah. So I guess to originally answer your question, out of the 2 I've been to, I'm going to make it a 3rd this year, although I'm just going to Joe Louis Arena. So I've heard it's not the greatest place to go, but I just want to go just for the nostalgia part of it. Yep. But that Game 7 I went to Denver, that was their first year with that new scoreboard, and everyone just raved about their game ops. So I really like their game ops. I thought they did a really good job with the in-game experience. Yep. So I was really impressed with them. And Washington, I didn't really get that vibe, and it also doesn't help that, although same with Colorado, but Washington kind of they share the arena with the Wizards, so you had Wizard stuff all around, and then there was some Cap stuff. And I also didn't appreciate the fact I ran around the entire arena trying to buy an Ovechkin jersey, but they didn't have the one I wanted specifically, so I never got one. It was their alternate, their throwback alternates that they wear.
The white with the red and blue.
The red with the. Because they stopped using those a couple years ago, so they didn't have any of those. And then the only ones of the red throwbacks were Backstrom or Oshie, and I was no. I got to the first store, I was do you know if any other stores in the arena have this? They're I have no idea. You'd have to go ask. It's do you guys need a radio system to figure this out?
17-year-olds looking at you
right.
Oh, no, just walk. Good luck.
But yeah,
I've never actually traveled for a Wild game. I've never seen another NHL arena.
Do you like hockey?
I do, and I've seen a fair amount of it in my day. But yeah, just not. I've never actually traveled for it. I've traveled for baseball, but not for hockey as of yet. So I am excited to go to Vegas because I've been to Vegas a couple of times, and I know what that's all about. So
we're going to take our podcast on the road.
Yeah, looking forward to podcasting from Vegas. Yeah, so. That's probably
your poor listeners that day.
I know.
Actually,
no, they really like the podcast when we're drunk. I should say they really like the podcast where Giles is drunk. They really enjoy those ones. So.
Have you seen the most recent comment on our iTunes reviews?
No, what is?
It literally says that. I enjoy the podcast, especially when I forget how it reads, but it just basically implies that I should always be drinking when we record.
Okay. Well, I mean,
there are worse comments to receive.
That's
true. If somebody said that about my writing, all right. Well, as you wish.
As my roommate would say, that is #brand.
Yes, that is on brand.
So I guess since we kind of talked about different arenas, I guess what is your favorite arena to be at?
Nashville's my favorite city, but definitely not my favorite arena. Not a great arena.
Bridgestone has got to be almost 20 years old now.
It's getting up there.
But it has not aged well either. Like, the X still amazes me, and I hate to, talk about how great the X is, but
and that's
it
a fair point, yeah.
is. Pittsburgh's got the other one that I really, really like.
Right.
Console, I think it still is. I always
it's
am
PPG
horrible at
now.
keeping track at how they so frequently change. Like San Jose's is different every 4 months. I think they only sign them on a 4-month lease. And then
no, Florida's the 4-month lease.
Yeah.
Sorry, Russo.
That's like a Florida tradition, though. The Dolphins were doing that for the longest time.
I don't even know what it is. But Pittsburgh's really good. Boston's good, but not as great as a lot of people say it is. Madison Square Garden's good, but only because it's Madison Square Garden. San Jose is surprisingly good. I do like going there.
Sure.
Even if they pipe in the music as loud as can be, so it sounds much louder than it actually is. So all the tech junkies that aren't clapping, it actually sounds loud.
We're not familiar with that here in Metrodome territory. We have nothing.
Never.
We've never heard of piping anything in anytime, anywhere.
Here's the last. Actually, I didn't see this one, but I have a good idea who that is. I think that's another prank review.
Brandon Logan says previous Giles level intoxication during the podcast is always entertaining. Nice. That is very on brand.
No, I think just kind of talking about ones I'm excited to go to, like Madison Square Garden, obviously up there. So I'm not really big into Boston because I know it's like 20 years old now or something like that, and like I'd only have really made a trip out there if it was still like the Boston Garden, just for nostalgia, as I've mentioned once or twice before. But and then a friend of mine has been to Staples Center, and he said that's one of probably his favorite arena that he's been to. It just they are really good, and he made the trip when the Wild went to LA and then Anaheim. So it was just a
fun way to do it.
It's just polar opposite of how the arenas are, going from Staples to the Pond.
Honda?
No, I call it the Pond.
Okay.
Have I talked about nostalgia?
The spaceship comes out and the duck ship comes out and flies. Yeah, that one.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Arrowhead Pond. I think. Do you have anything else, or?
I can probably wrap it up.
I can probably do it for us. Is there anything you'd like to
let you down? I wish I had some more stories.
This was great.
Stories were fantastic. It was all we could have asked for.
Is there anything you'd want to promote or whatnot for
I don't think
upcoming
so.
work?
People have seen enough of me. They don't need to go feeding my stuff.
No, you can find Chad on Twitter at Chad Graff. There's no underscore.
Yeah. No,
okay.
No underscore.
No, we're the same. But some people just throw you for a loop and they throw like an underscore in between the first and last name. It just it makes it finding them a lot more difficult. But,
we're just cool people with unique enough names to where we got to Twitter first. Like we're just unique enough to where we all made it in.
I could still sign up today and be okay.
Yeah, you'd be fine.
But, so thanks to Chad for jumping on with us.
Thank you guys. Glad it worked.
Hopefully we'll have him back down the road at some point. It's been fun. Ben and I will be back next week. I think we're gonna come back to a regular schedule now of recording. We've been kind of weird the last few weeks, but. That'll wrap it up. Again, you can find Ben and I now at coldomaha.com, and again, you can find Chad writing at the Pioneer Press at twincities.com or buy a paper. He's right now on the Gophers Hoops beat, so if that's your fancy.
If mediocre writing about mediocre teams is your thing, do I have the spot for you?
Weird. I was going to say the same thing for me last year. I was going to say that was our bit until the team got too good for us, basically.
That'll do it for us. Again, thanks to the Chad for hopping on, and we will see everyone next week.
Thanks.
St. Paul, Minnesota. Minneapolis, Minnesota.
We are ducks, and ducks fly together.
good looking glass.